After the pearl is extracted, it is surprisingly not discarded directly. Instead, another pearl of the exact same size is inserted into its body. This process cannot involve any extra cuts or deviation in positioning, or else it might lead to losses. These treasures, capable of generating immense wealth, are protected by local laws prohibiting pearl farmers from directly harvesting mature pearl oysters from the sea. To obtain such treasures, one must either rely on luck and wait for them to come into traps, or directly serve as a nanny to cultivate them. This is in the French Polynesian Islands, where the lagoons surrounded by coral islands form a unique ecosystem, nurturing today's stars, the black-lipped pearl oysters, which can grow to a diameter of 30 centimeters. These creatures are unique to the saltwater lakes, and only 15,000 to 20,000 wild black-lipped oysters might produce a single pearl. This is the renowned and highly coveted Tahitian pearl. The so-called Tahitian refers to Tahiti, the largest island in French Polynesia. In the island's nurseries, under the alternating impacts of warm and cold seawater, the black-lipped oysters can no longer resist, and begin to release plumes of smoke-like clouds, spawning. For the safety of the wild black-lipped oysters, they continuously reproduce throughout the year. Even in the perpetually spring-like climate of Tahiti, they can thrive and expand their populations year-round in the ocean. Without much communication, the males and females simultaneously release gametes, creating new life. To ensure the hard work pays off, workers remove water from the breeding rooms after half a month, allowing the larvae to attach to fibers and grow. The goal is to ensure that as many of these tiny treasures, barely visible to the naked eye, survive and thrive. Raising these baby oysters to maturity is no easy task. Tahitian pearls are so expensive not only because the process of seeding pearls is costly, with one procedure costing about $10,000, but also due to the rarity of black-lipped oysters. Unlike other shellfish with resilient vitality, black-lipped oysters are quite fragile and prone to death at the slightest issue. Workers must ensure the oysters live comfortably, and they must prepare different nutritious meals for pearl larvae at various stages. Only when the larvae grow strong enough on fibers are they allowed to adapt to life in the ocean. The oysters must endure at least 2 years of waves and tides in the sea before they are ready for the task of pearl cultivation. Before releasing the larvae into the sea, workers carefully select the location, ensuring the water quality meets standards. The area has abundant food, and predators are minimal. The more microorganisms in the seawater, the more nutrients the oysters can absorb, leading to the secretion of more nacre, pearl substance. The thicker and denser the nacre, the fewer flaws the pearl will have. If free cleaners are available, that's even better. Some fish species feed on the parasites on black-lipped oysters, which can significantly reduce the number of times workers need to manually clean the shells each year. Once the location is confirmed, workers hang the fiber straps carrying the attached oyster larvae onto ropes supported by buoyant balls, allowing them to face the trials of nature. Here, workers no longer provide them with food or protection. Floating in the ocean, immobile, they are left to be bullied by seaweed and algae, which use them as dining tables, stealing their food. Before long, the larvae become unrecognizable, resembling abandoned strings of ocean trash. To ensure the larvae grow smoothly, workers clean off the excess burdens on them every few months. As the oysters grow larger, the crowded fibers become unsuitable for their development, so workers release them. There have been cases with Japanese scallops frequently traveling abroad, prompting workers to tie them to ropes to prevent them from following suit. Unlike the resource-stealing algae and seaweed, some fish are far more lethal. Discovering the nursery feels like finding a new continent to them. Once they get a taste of the oysters, they refuse to leave. Every year, a significant number of larvae fall victim to these fish. With rows of sharp iron-like teeth, they chew through the oyster shells like peanuts. Even if protective armor is added to the pearl oysters, these fish can still break through and create holes in the shells. To deter the fish, this farm is studying ways to provide them with electric therapy. Workers use oyster meat to lure the fish, leading them to believe it's a free meal. Once they approach, electric wires shock them, making them feel an unforgettable discomfort. Over time, whenever the fish smell the black-lipped oysters, they learn to avoid them entirely. This is a long-term battle. Currently, the fastest and most effective solutions are either to add protective armor, or to raise the oysters directly in cages or boxes. In the wild, black-lipped oysters grow among coral reefs. The algae on their shells provide perfect camouflage, allowing them to blend seamlessly with the coral. Even so, they cannot escape the sharp eyes of humans. Globally, 95% of black pearls come from the waters around Tahiti, and all of these originate from black-lipped oysters. In the past, people didn't care about the survival of black-lipped oysters. Seeing them sparked greed. For a time, the lagoons were so thoroughly harvested that only a few black-lipped oysters remained. It wasn't until the 1960s that the local area adopted pearl farming techniques from Japan and enforced legal protections, improving the situation. After about 2 years, workers harvest the mature black-lipped oysters from the sea and bring them ashore for processing. Inside, the sound of chopping fills the air. In the workers' swift and skilled movements, the previously unkempt and messy pearl oysters, instantly refreshed and renewed. The oysters are now set to undergo major surgery. Parasites on the shells might enter the pearl oyster's body, causing unwanted complications. After cleaning, workers use tools to pry open a small gap in the black-lipped oyster shells, wedge them open with wooden blocks, and begin inspecting the inner shells of each one. Only shells with bright colors and gradual color transitions are more likely to produce pearls with vibrant and rich hues. Those with distinctly divided black and white patterns are immediately discarded. After sterilizing the surgical tools, workers fully open the rejected pearl oysters, cut off their skirts, and trim out the useful parts. These are then pressed flat and cut into 2 to 3 mm wide cell fragments. Both pearl oysters and mussels have the ability to form pearls internally. The pearls they produce are generally determined by the inner shell and the implanted cell fragments. Even experts still don't fully understand the underlying mechanisms. It's only through extensive pearl production that this pattern has been observed. Once all the preparations are complete, workers move the black-lipped oysters into the operating room. On the simple workbenches, each station is equipped with cold, sterile surgical tools. The workers, fully focused on their tasks, are not saving lives, but instead turning the oyster's pain into human joy. The workers pick up surgical knives, cutting a small hole along the reproductive line of the black-lipped oysters. Next, using their left hand, they use a tool to widen the incision, while their right hand picks up a pearl nucleus, inserting it into the reproductive line. Finally, they place the cell fragments around the nucleus. The creation of pearls by oysters is essentially a defense mechanism. Within 10 days, the pearl oyster begins forming a pearl sac around the implanted cell fragments, completely enveloping the nucleus. It then slowly secretes smooth, lustrous layers of nacre. Grafting the nucleus is a highly skilled task. A single extra cut or a misplacement could result in a failed pearl, at best, or death of the oyster, at worst. Grafting workers must undergo multiple evaluations each year. If their failed pearl rate exceeds 20% within 3 months, they are deemed unqualified. These workers are mostly foreign technicians, working far from home to earn a better income. To secure their jobs, they strive to continuously improve their skills. Pearl exports are the region's second-largest industry. To reduce dependence on foreign workers, the local community is committed to training young people to master this craft. However, it takes at least 5 years of training, from start to finish, for them to become fully qualified. Meanwhile, in the neighboring shed, another batch of pearl oysters is undergoing the same treatment process. The difference is that they are regulars. This is their 3rd surgery. After workers cut open their reproductive lines with a knife, they remove a lustrous, dark pearl. Then, a pearl nucleus of the same size is selected and placed back in the original position of the pearl. Unlike the first grafting procedure, this time no cell fragments are needed. At this point, the pearl sac is already formed. By placing the nucleus inside, the oysters will continue to secrete nacre to produce pearls. Since the subsequent pearls are formed on the foundation of the previous ones, they grow larger and become even more valuable. In the farm, black-lipped oysters are grafted up to 3 times in their lifetime. After 3 cycles, they are either released back into the sea, harvested for meat, or their shells are used to make nuclei, or crafted into buttons and other ornaments. Once all the grafting work is completed, workers drill small holes at the hinge of the oyster shells, tie them with straps onto ropes, and add a protective covering along the rope to ensure the oyster's safety. After securing the oysters, the workers load the strings onto a boat and head to their ocean farm. Black-lipped oysters are prone to stress in new environments, so they are usually returned to the same waters they were taken from. Before long, the boat reaches the designated release area. Workers coil the rope into a loop, throw it out to catch onto the buoy, and secure it to the boat. Then they jump into the water. Receive the strings of pearl oysters from another worker, and dive down into the sea. Within seconds, a string of pearl oysters is tied to the main rope. These seemingly casual knots are not only secure but also easy to untie later, significantly reducing underwater harvesting time in the future. With time ticking away, a few minutes pass as the worker ties several strings of pearl oysters. Feeling suffocated from holding their breath, they eagerly swim back to the surface once the task is done. Every worker releasing pearl oysters is a skilled free diver. Even so, their careers typically last only a few years. Prolonged deep-sea work inevitably causes some occupational illnesses. The sea is unforgiving, allowing no room for recklessness. However, a few years of hard work can provide enough for them to enjoy life on shore. 18 months later, the first cycle of the pearl oyster's work will be complete. After workers remove all the pearls, they pour them into trays and examine them using X-ray machines. Locally, the thickness of the nacre layer must be at least 0.8 millimeters to meet export standards. Those that fail to meet the standard are destroyed. Qualified pearls are polished using tools, then packaged and collected by buyers. Each black-lipped oyster produces pearls that are unique. Although Tahitian black pearls are named black, they are not the solid black of a lump of iron. Instead, they exhibit an array of rich and dry colors. Some are peacock green, some are dreamy purple, some are elegant gray, and others even radiate mysterious and brilliant gradient hues. At the buyer's processing factories, workers sort the pearls by size, shape, color, luster, and purity. The buyers then sell them through various exhibitions or auctions. Once they reach jewelers, the pearls undergo further processes such as drilling. Some become necklaces, others pendants, and many are turned into various types of jewelry. Due to the rarity of black-lipped oysters and the high labor costs involved in pearl cultivation, even small first harvest pearls can fetch hundreds on the market. Unlike precious diamonds or jade, pearls are organic gemstones. Their beauty is best appreciated early on, for after their fleeting brilliance fades, their luster dims with time. When the moment comes, as both people and pearls grow old, will one regret having spent so much money on them back in the day? Thank you for watching, and see you next time.